All right, how you guys doing today? Coming back at you with another quadratic formula lesson. My kids have some Paw Patrol going on in the background, so hopefully you don't hear any of that. Now, what I'm hearing a lot of from you guys is that some of you are struggling at certain steps in the quadratic formula, and it's causing you to end up with a wrong answer at the end. So I thought I'd go through a couple examples sort of step by step. I wrote out the steps on the side here. We'll go over them in just a second, and we'll use these. If you use them to solve the problems, I think you're going to be in pretty good shape. So you might want to write these down in your notebook or something so you have them handy. All right, step one is we are going to write the quadratic formula. So in my first example here, I have 3x squared minus x minus 2. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to write the quadratic formula, which is x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac divided by 2a. All right, so that's step one. Should be a nice, easy step for everybody. All right, step two, we're going to substitute. So that means we're going to substitute in our A, our B, and our C. Now, once you've done this for a while, you probably don't need to do this part right here. But just to show you where they're coming from, I'm going to write our standard form above the example here. ax squared plus bx plus c is equal to 0. So this is saying that my A is 3, my B is negative 1, and my C is negative 2. So I'm going to substitute those values in. So I'm going to have x equals opposite of negative 1, so positive 1, plus or minus the square root. B, so negative 1 squared, minus 4. A is 3, and C is negative 2. And all this is going to be divided by 2 times my A, which is 3. All right, so this is step two, just substituting in the problem. Now, my third step, find the value inside the square root or the radical. So we're going to look at my radical here, and I'm just going to find the value of what's inside of here. So don't put the radical inside your calculator, but just type in your calculator, negative 1 squared minus 4 times 3 times negative 2. What we're going to end up with, I believe, is we're going to end up with 25. So it's 1 plus or minus the square root of 25 divided by 2 times 3, which is 6. All right. Step 4, we're going to simplify our radical if possible. Now, sometimes that won't be possible, but most of the time we are going to be able to simplify. In this particular case, it's a really easy simplification because we know that the square root of 25 is 5. So we could write this as x equals 1 plus or minus 5 divided by 6. All right, now my last step is to find your final answer by adding and subtracting. So notice we've got a plus and a minus here. So essentially what this is saying to do is do this example twice, once with a plus sign and once with a minus sign. So I'm going to be doing x equals 1 plus 5 divided by 6, and I'm going to be doing 1 minus 5 divided by 6. And I'm just going to try and simplify those answers as much as I can. 1 plus 5 is 6 divided by 6. This would be 1. 1 minus 5 divided by 6. That's going to be negative 4/6, or a negative 2/3. All right, so hopefully that made sense to you guys. I'm going to do this one more time just to give you a little bit more clarity. Hopefully we've got it. All right, so next example here, negative x squared minus 8x plus 2 equals 0. So again, step one, write our quadratic formula. So we're going to write the quadratic formula out. x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac divided by 2a. All right, step 2. I'm going to substitute in my values. Okay, so again, if you need to, don't be afraid to put your a, your b, and your c in here. I'll write it above so you can see where I'm getting these values. So my a is -1, my b is -8, my c is 2. So I'm going to put in negative b, so the opposite of -8, positive 8, plus or minus the square root, b squared, so b is -8 squared, minus 4, a is -1, and c is positive 2. And I'm going to divide that by 2 times -1. All right, step 3, I'll come back here. Find the value inside the radical. So I'm just gonna look inside the radical at this part right here. You can put this right in your calculator. You might wanna do that right now while I'm talking. You're gonna type into your calculator, -8 squared. Make sure you're putting parentheses around that -8. Minus 4 times -1 times 2. Just put that right inside your calculator. And if I'm doing this correct mentally, we're gonna get 8 plus or minus the square root of 72 divided by -2. All right, now this one's a little bit more complex than the last one. And the reason for that is when we come to step 4 says simplify the radical if possible. Well, last time we had a perfect square. We had square root of 25, which we knew was 5. We don't have one that's quite as nice now. This time it's square root of 72. So what we're gonna do is off to the side, I'm gonna put square root of 72, and we're gonna try and simplify that, which we did about a week ago. So we're gonna break this down, 72. You could use 8 and 9. I'm gonna use 36 and 2 to kind of make my life easier. 36 is gonna break up into 6 and 6. And so I have a pair of 6's that will go outside my radical, and I have a 2 that's left inside. So this is gonna be 6 radical 2. So now what I have over here is x equals 8 plus or minus 6 radical 2 divided by -2. All right, now the toughest part is going to be my last step, my final step here. Find our final answer by adding or subtracting. All right, so I'm going to write this out so hopefully we can see it. It is going to be a little bit tricky. 8 plus 6 square root of 2 divided by -2, and then 8 minus 6 square root of 2 divided by -2. Now, unfortunately, we can't quite leave it like this. What you want to do is you want to divide both of these terms by the denominator if possible. So 8 and 6, we're going to divide both of them by this -2. And same thing over here. So what we're going to be left with is x equals -4 minus 3 radical 2. And then over here, I'm going to be left with -4 plus 3 radical 2. Now, we could put this in your calculator and you could get some sort of decimal answer if you wanted to. But most of the time, I'm just going to ask that you leave it just like this. We will talk about in future episodes how you can put this in your calculator and get a decimal approximation. But for our purposes, this is what I'm going to go with for the answer most of the time. This is also what we call exact form or exact value. This is the exact value here. All right, hopefully this episode was helpful to you guys. Again, I recommend following these 5 steps to get your answers. All right, please let me know if you have any questions.